Alright, I'm just gonna say it. Pokémon Legends EA is both one of the most fun and one of the most disappointing Pokemon games I've played in years. The gameplay loop is amazing, the combat, immaculate, but man, everything else, it's rough. Let's start with what they nailed, the combat. Game Freak really nailed the flow of battle this time. It feels refined, needed, and honestly, it keeps you hooked. I've spent about 75 hours in the game, taking my time, completing the Pokédex. I've done every side quest, caught every Pokemon, Mega Evolution, all of that. And I can say the gameplay alone carries the entire experience. And it's this gameplay, catching, battling, progressing, that's doing all the heavy lifting here. But the moment you stop battling and you start looking around, that's when the cracks start to show. The world itself, pretty lackluster. The textures, disappointing. Now don't get me wrong, the game runs fine, which is great, but visually it just feels lazy, and it's very apparent. We're in 2025, and Game Freak is still dropping flat, lifeless environments in a franchise that's worth billions. You could easily compare this game to Legends Arceus, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet and Violet. And a lot of people I know like to compare it to Scarlet and Violet and say, hey, look how far we've come. Look how much better it is. But the graphical fidelity of Scarlet and Violet was on the bar was on the floor. It was on the floor. And this being the supposed step up to that is not really a good indication of what you would want to compare to what you would believe would be a good Pokemon game. Now, Legends Arceus had its flaws, its muddy textures and all that goodness, but it had an artistic style that made you completely ignore the low polyed graphical textures around, because that artistic style really pushed it forward. With Sword and Shield, the models were just better in general. Like, houses and buildings were just very well modeled, 3D perspective. They weren't just flat backgrounds. They were legit actually modeled and everything. Which actually brings me to another point, the clothes. Now, okay. In a way, it was already expected that the female characters would most likely get the best options in this game, as that's how it's always been with every Pokemon game, with the ability to customize your outfits. But this game particularly takes it to another level. With a city that is modeled after Paris, you would expect, the fashion options to be pretty robust. But the amount of hair customization options are disappointing, and the ones that we do have kind of suck, to be honest. And then the clothing options only have so many that are good for the male character. And even at that, some of the best outfits for the male character don't open up until you do a specific main quest leading to the opening of said shop where you could buy better clothing. I don't really have a problem with how that happens, main mission, open up the ability to get at that specific shop. It's not really the big point. The point is that throughout the entire game, your options for clothing just kind of suck for the male character. And sure, I guess you could say that's subjective depending on what you enjoy. And I know there is a system in place where the male character and the female character can wear any clothes they want. But I mean, if you're the male character, there's like a 90% chance you're not wearing any of the female character clothes. But the female character can get away with wearing pretty much anything. But I digress. It's not that big a deal. But let's move on. And let's talk about something that honestly shocked me at this point. The lack of voice acting. They clearly put a ton of work into the animated cutscenes. The characters move, their mouths are synced to speech patterns, and yet no sound. It's actually eerie, like watching a beautifully animated puppet show on mute. It seems at this point, Game Freak would put a little more investment into their largest franchise, arguably, not even really arguably, the largest franchise in gaming in the world. But they seem to always lack in some area. with every game they make. Which brings me to my next point, their design philosophy. Now, here's the thing. I've played pretty much every Pokemon game, and I always give credit where it's due. Game Freak knows how to make a game fun to play. They've mastered gameplay loop that keeps you going all the way to the end, for the most part. But they've also mastered cutting corners when it comes to visuals and polish. I have to say, the last game that they really felt like they gave it their all was Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon on the 3DS. Even Sword and Shield looked better than this in some areas. And Legends Arceus, despite its muddy textures, at least had a beautiful art direction and a diverse world that kept you exploring. I think the real issue that Game Freak is starting to suffer with, or has been suffering with for a while, is they're basically on a Call of Duty release schedule. 1 or 2 Pokemon games every year, and that's just not sustainable. Game Freak needs more than 2 years to make a truly fleshed out open world Pokemon game. So I'm just gonna give it here, my honest rating. I'd say Pokemon Legends EA is a 6 out of 10. The combat and the Pokemon models are absolutely carrying the experience. It's fun, there's no denying that, but between the lifeless world, the missing voice acting, and the lack of biome variety or diversity, it's a definite step down from Legends Arceus. And sure, if you're a longtime Pokemon fan, you'll still enjoy it, but you'll also see exactly where it falls short. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously I still enjoyed the game, as I, 100%ed it basically, and I did everything you could do in the game. But it's still pretty obvious that it could be better. Anyway, that's my take on Pokemon Legends EA. Let me know in the comments what you think. Am I being too harsh? Or do you agree that Game Freak's gotta slow down and finally deliver a full next-gen Pokemon experience? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more honest reviews and gameplay breakdowns.